What is going on, SHIPIT Nation, YouTube station? We made it. We're here. Appreciate everybody hanging on with us for a little 10-minute delay. Rio had the warm-up questionable tag tonight, and he didn't want to pull an Amen Thompson and end up missing the game. But he made it through. Shout out to him. 6 games on DraftKings tonight. Before we kind of dive into all that stuff, how was your night last night? Obviously, some unpredictable news, unfortunately, as the season winds down. But aside from DFS, hope everything's going well.
Yeah, everything's going good. Obviously, the Amen Thompson late scratch screwed both of us. I had him in my Millie lineup. I don't think it would have mattered for me as much, but I saw you were in like the 30-ish range in the 555, so it definitely would have helped you. You had a pretty good team there. So that was definitely rough, but I didn't have a ton in my 150 set. I had a lot of Jalen Green, but it honestly didn't even matter. I had way too much Dennis Schroeder, way too much Campaign. Not enough Cat, not enough Josh Hart. So it's just, I don't know. It's been the end of the season is really rough. It's hard to feel confident, like go all in on those types of plays. It felt like Schroeder was a can't lose chalk play. So I guess, maybe take that into account tonight because we do have some really, really good chalk. What I'm seeing first off, like right off the bat. So maybe just keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking that these guys can't lose, but they definitely can. So. Yeah, not a great night, but we get another chance tonight, and then we got baseball tomorrow, which I'm excited about. And it's just technical difficulties on my end. I don't know what happened. My PC's been acting weird, so I had to go with the backup quarterback and go with the laptop today.
People are gonna love it, man. They can see your face. I think everybody's jacked up. They don't mind waiting a little bit before we dive in. We'll get into it. I'll throw an ad on as we kind of get going. My apologies for not doing that yesterday for everybody that isn't a member to kind of check out what we're about. Shiptimizer is going to be all finished at the end of the month. If you haven't heard, though, we are with SaberSim now. So if you haven't dabbled in the streets of that yet, I'll throw up a little promo sheet here in a few games. But we'll dive right into this 6-game slate on DraftKings. Wizards at the Sixers. 76ers are favored by 3. Sixers are favored by 3. 231 total. I think these first 2 games we're going to talk about seem like real tanking situations. All these teams really need to lose to kind of keep their draft capital in line. So there's a million guys out in this first game. Middleton, Smart, Brogdon, Koulibaly, obviously, Keyshawn George, Lonnie, Kelly, Drummond. What are we thinking here? Are you going to be diving into any of these Wizards with the dangerous standpoint of, they may not play in full?
Yeah, I definitely still have interest in some of these guys. Like you said, though, like this is a pretty big game in terms of tanking implications. The Pistons the Sixers are still trying to hold on to their protected pick, and then the Wizards are trying to stay within that bottom 3. Jazz are losing a ton of games right now. They've been kind of winning a little bit here and there, so they've kind of lost their standing a little bit, I think. But we're going to see some weird stuff from them, like we've seen before. We've seen Jordan Poole and some of the other guys get benched in the second half. I don't think that Poole is really somebody you can really consider tonight, even at the low price tags. I honestly think the minutes will be really held in check for him. So the guys that I'm kind of considering on Washington, I do think that these guys are viable because it is a really good matchup. The Sixers have been terrible on defense, especially around the basket. So I think Sarr is in a pretty good spot here. Same thing for him, though. Like the minutes aren't secure. We could definitely see like the shorter rotations in the second half. But the minutes that he is on the court, they're trying to get him involved a lot. Like he's taking a ton of shots right now, and the matchup's really good. So I don't really mind Alex Sarr. I think he's quite a good option tonight. But the guy that I think is the safest on this team is Tristan Vukovic. They're trying to get him alongside Sarr right now. He's going to play 30+ minutes if he's starting. 4.3K, good price tag for him, good matchup. So I think that he's for sure the best option on the Wizards side. And then the guys I'll be mixing in some Colby Jones, some Jalen Martin, who else? Like AJ Johnson. He's playing a lot right now. I think they want to see what they have in him. The guys I'm just a little bit cautious on, Jordan Poole for sure. I don't think I'll have any. Bub Carrington, I think it can go both ways for him because he is part of the future plan. So I don't really know if they want to, they already know what they have in him. They drafted him in the first round. Apparently he had a death in the family, so maybe they want to just play him a little bit longer just to kind of get his mind off of that. But he's a guy that I could see getting cut down. And then Sarr as well. I could see him maybe being capped at 28 and not really get into the mid to low 30s. So yeah, the guys that I'm really considering: Vukovic, AJ Johnson, Colby Jones, Jalen Martin. Probably don't want more than 2 of them just because I don't think that like anybody is really safe. Like they're going to get some guys involved. They have JT Thor. They still have Rashawn Holmes available. I don't think that he's going to really play much anymore, but not a situation where I want to go all in on. And then the Sixers side, a lot tougher to get into, but we'll see a pretty tight rotation for them as well because they do have some of these two-way guys that will miss tonight. There's 3 guys that are kind of nearing the end of their 10-day contract or two-way deal, whatever it is. Jeff Downton is the guy I think is the most likely to sit tonight. I think he only has like 3 or 4 games left on his deal. And then who else is it? Alex Reese, I believe, is another guy that he's kind of nearing the end of his. And there's one more. I forget who it is, but those are the 2 main guys that could sit tonight. If Downton sits, it kind of solidifies Jared Butler's minutes. Still think he's kind of overpriced right now. I would kind of have a little bit more interest in Ricky Council and Jalen Hood-Schifino in particular, because I do think that they're going to want to get a longer look at him towards the end of the year. And then Justin Edwards, he's playing a ton right now. He has pretty good usage, and he's playing really well. So I don't mind him at all. But definitely keep an eye out for the starting lineup because Gershon Yabusele has been terrible at the center spot, and they might just start Adem Bona alongside of him. Bona had a 20-minute cap last game that might get pushed up to like the mid-20s tonight. I think that he'd be a decent option in a good matchup if he does get the start at center. And they say anything about his minutes cap being lifted or being extended a little bit. And then obviously got to mention the greatest player in the league, Quentin Grimes, 9.1K for him. I'm going to continue to fade him. I just think it's too expensive now. I mean, especially now that he's 9K plus. But like you said, like I said, a lot of times, like he has good matchup and the usage is really good for him. So you could definitely make a case to play him. He's probably going to be in like the low 30s tonight, just with this game being a pretty game in terms of tanking.
Yeah, I think you said it perfect. We're going to want to get to these Wizards. You know, I love Vuk. I think he's going to be one of my favorite plays on the whole slate. And then jumping over to the Sixers side, you know, you say, you know, we can't fade the stud. You know, I thought you were talking about Justin Edwards there for a second. That guy just keeps on giving. They're finally kind of getting his price right. But I think I like him personally a little bit more than I like Grimes. But from a Sixers perspective, you know, let me know if I'm wrong. But from what I've kind of picked up is, you know, once these guys are in and they're playing, you know these guys are going to get the minutes. They're not pulling like a Raptors or a Wizards and letting these guys play and then kind of pulling them. That's more of just kind of like a personal watching the games and kind of seeing some of the minutes that everybody's played. But definitely, you know, a game that we're going to feel like we need to attack this bad Sixers defense just becomes real hard. And that's why I really like Vuk at 43. Like you said, if somehow he winds up playing 30 minutes, my goodness. I mean, this dude, you know, could have 40 DraftKings points. So, absolutely agree with what you said there. Let's get this other game out of the way that's really ugly as well. Raptors at the Nets, 2.5-point spread in favor of the Nets, a 214 total, if my math, 214.5 total. Another dangerous one to kind of, you know, go through. I think both these teams have players in the starting lineups that, you know, may not play the fourth quarter, even in a close game. Would you agree, or are you seeing something that I'm not here?
No, especially on the Toronto side. I want to circle back really quick to the Washington side because I did forget one guy, Jalen Martin at 3K. He's going to play a lot of minutes, so he's pretty much safe regardless if he's starting or coming off the bench. Just wanted to throw that guy out there as well. But yeah, the Toronto side for sure that's very risky. I don't think you can really consider Scotty Barnes or RJ Barrett at all. Like these guys are RJ Barrett for sure. I could see him getting benched in the second half. And then Scotty Barnes, like the minutes just haven't really been there. They're kind of playing him normal-ish minutes, like upper 20s, low 30s. He's been doing pretty good, but it's just a little too risky for me at 8.7K. I mean, the matchup is really good, but they're kind of just playing him because they want him to get like all defensive team. Apparently, I don't even know if he's in the consideration there. So yeah, the Raptors side is going to be kind of tough to get to. I don't mind Orlando Robinson, assuming that he's starting because Colin Castleton, I think his first name's Colin. His 10-day contract is up, and Jakob Poeltl's out, so they really only have 2 centers right now. So it's probably going to be a full 48-minute split between him and Mobo, and then whoever starts, I think, is a pretty solid option. Mobo with the power forward center eligibility, but like even Jamal Shed, we've seen him get benched when he was just playing too good. Only played 12 minutes in that game against Philly. because he was plus 17 or something, and they had to lose it. Still ended up winning it.
I think he had like 5 and 5 in 12 minutes. He was popular that night too.
He was like, I think I almost locked him. I think a lot of people play, like he was probably 70+% in a lot of tournaments that night. So he's another guy that could get rug pulled. So the guys that I have interest in would probably just be the bigs, Orlando Robinson and Mobo, in a good matchup. I think that maybe sprinkles of like Jamison Battle, Ochai Agbaji, and then Jacoby Walter would be okay. Walter might play a ton of minutes just because he's a young guy, been kind of in and out of the lineup, not really playing a lot in these back-to-backs. I think he'd be okay, but not very confident in that. I think it's just the bigs for me on Toronto. Brooklyn side, they're playing these guys normal minutes. Like Claxton is still in the upper 20s, low 30s. D'Lo's been playing around 28 to 30 minutes a night. So you can feel pretty confident those guys are still going to play. I think there's a little bit less tanking implications for them. If I could just pull up the Tankathon real quick, because I know that there are some. I think the Raptors need to lose more so than Brooklyn does. Actually, Brooklyn. So this is a huge game. Yeah. So
Brooklyn, it's big for Brooklyn. Of all four, I think it means the most, right?
Yeah, because they're tied with Philly right now. They are 2 games ahead or behind, whatever you want to consider. They have 23 wins. Toronto has 25. So, yeah, they might do some weird stuff here and just kind of solidify the loss. I still think that you're probably okay playing Claxton and D'Lo. I kind of feel like D'Lo is more of he's kind of the decision point on the slate because he's getting a ton of ownership. And it's a good price for him. We know that he's got upside there, and he's playing normal minutes. I'm kind of going to be on the underweight side, maybe even fade, and just because there are some games, pretty much every game after this one does have implications for playoffs. So I'd rather just buy into those ones more so than play a chalky D'Angelo Russell where he could just really get the bottom falling out pretty hard there. They did call up Dariq Whitehead as well, so he could eat into those minutes. They've talked about getting Maxwell Lewis some more minutes as well towards the end of the season. So there's kind of a lot of ways that D'Lo could fail here. But I feel pretty strongly that Trent Watford is a solid option. Power forward center eligibility, 4.6K, good matchup. He's probably going to get all those backup center minutes and maybe even a little bit of the backup point guard minutes. They have been using him a lot as a ball handler when he's out there in the second unit. So he's pretty safe, in my opinion. I really do like Trent Watford. And I'm not really too into the secondary guys. Like I don't think that there's enough upside on Zaire, Tyrese Martin, or Noah Clowney, or Jalen Wilson for that matter. Like all those guys are kind of out of place. So I think it's more so of my exposure going to be on Claxton and Watford. And then I am playing 150 tonight, so I'll maybe just sprinkle in a little bit of Dariq Whitehead and Maxwell Lewis on the off chance that they play like 25 to 28 minutes tonight.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. D'Lo at that ownership, I mean, even if it's down into the 20s, I think the tag's a little bit too much for the potential of not being able to give us a tournament winning upside. I love looking at that percentage when I know I'm going to be in the fade boat. Watford, I mean, if I'm building lineups for, 2 minutes from now, Watford and Vooch in the first game is a pretty good kind of baseline to start with. Even though it's popular, I think that's a very fair spot. And then, to kind of go back on what you said about Shed, I think I completely agree. I think, if the Raptors get out to a nice early lead here, they will be pulling these guys. At 4,400, though, that does give me a little bit of, second thought there. I may have a little interest at that tag. Doesn't need a ton of upside to really pay off his tag. And at 4,400, it really opens up a lot of things. But did like the Jacoby Walter call at 3,800. Even though he's not the best fantasy point per minute producer, we could look up. He could get 30 some odd minutes, and at 3,800. I mean, goodness gracious, that'd be a really good start. But
he's going to chuck it when he's out there too. He's actually got like decent catch and shoot ability. So I think that, I don't know if like the upside is really there for him, but wouldn't be surprised if he ends at like 25, 26 tonight, which would be pretty good at low ownership.
Yeah, no, love it. Now we get talking about some real games here. So Lakers at Indy, Rui, LeBron, they're probable tonight. Obviously, Kleber's out. The one note that I will share that I'm sure you'll get to is the Lakers have been really bad on defense, specifically in transition. This is a Pacers team that likes to take advantage of these transition points. I'm getting to a lot of love for the Pacers here, but really curious to hear your thoughts on this game.
Yeah. I agree. Everything you said. They have been very bad, mainly over the last 3 games, 130.4 defensive rating, and kind of giving it up in weird ways. Like obviously the transition defense, but they played Orlando, and Orlando put up a ton of points on them. Orlando is one of the worst, if not the worst, offense in the league. So it's definitely been
I think they were up like 20 at one point in that game too, right?
Possibly.
Orlando?
I didn't have much exposure. So, if you're not playing guys in DFS, I just kind of tune out. But yeah, I mean, they're really struggling with defense right now. And yeah, I agree. Like the Pacers, they play fast pace. They gave up a ton of points to the Bulls. It was like, might have been like 60 something transition points, something like that, like a crazy amount of transition points. And the Pacers play very similar style of basketball. JJ Redick, I think is a really good coach. I think that he'll come out with a solid game plan, but it's also kind of hard to implement that directly after having like a pretty rough stretch. It might be something that happens over the next couple games. Might be even, something looking at like a lineup change here. Rui was a guy that was in the starting lineup when they made all these trades. He's been playing really well before the injury, and then they've been kind of easing him in off the bench. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lineup change for them. And then for the Pacers, they're just rim funnel defense. It's kind of been the same thing for the past 3-4 years, ever since Rick Carlisle's gone there. So I think it is a pretty decent spot for LeBron and Luka, both being drive-heavy, ball-dominant guards or wings, whatever you want to consider LeBron. But individually, they will have some pretty tough matchups, I would say. I think that the way they're going to do it is Nesmith on LeBron and then Nembhard on Luka. If that's the case, I still think that they have the advantage there because they're both like Luka probably has, I don't know, 80 pounds on Nembhard and 6 inches, and LeBron is for sure like massive size advantage over Nesmith there. So I'm kind of in the boat that they can win these matchups. Looking at the price tags though, and just the upside that we haven't really gotten from Luka, it's going to be a lot tougher for me to get to him at 12K. It's just a lot less risky to pay down for LeBron at 10.3K. I know he's had a couple bad games since returning from the groin injury, but the good news is that he was basically full right off the bat. You only see 31 minutes against Chicago, but he was in the game in the fourth quarter, lost 7 minutes of rotation due to blowout, and then played 38 against Orlando. So we're probably getting 38 from him every game moving forward as long as he's healthy. And I think wings are where you want to attack the Pacers. So I do think LeBron, probably one of the best spin-ups tonight. I definitely prefer him over Luka. But obviously I don't have anything against Luka. If you have 12K and a util spot or a point guard spot and you land on Luka, you should feel pretty happy about that. Reeves a little bit too expensive for me, 8.3K. And then I think if Rui is starting, he's kind of interesting. So like I said, I think wings are where you want to attack the Pacers. He'd be pretty low owned. And this is a big game for both teams. The Lakers have a couple teams right behind them. I think that they, like, with a couple losses, they could fall all the way down to 8th. And then for the Pacers, they have Detroit and Milwaukee behind them. So definitely would be a good win for them to get here. On the Pacers side, it's pretty much just Halliburton and Turner for me. I think Halliburton is a really, really strong option. We've seen a couple times in his career, and especially this season, he had what was the injury? Was it a hamstring injury or groin injury he had earlier this month, I believe?
Halliburton?
Yeah.
I think it was – no, it was not a calf. Is it a hamstring? I think it's a hamstring, actually, now that I think about it. And then he had a problem with his back over the last, like, week and a half.
Yeah, that's what he's dealing with right now. So I'm just saying because with the injuries, the way that these things usually end up is, like, it takes 2 games for them to ramp up the minutes. Third game, they'll usually unleash them. We saw that with Paulo earlier. We saw it with Franz earlier this season. Same thing with Halliburton. 2 games from the hamstring injury, then ramped it up in the third game. So he's probably close to full in this game. And, I mean, he's been doing really, really well in games that he's healthy in the second half of the season. These are numbers I took from NBA University, which is a really good follow on Twitter. If you don't follow them, you definitely should. But averaging 21.6 points and has 11-to-1 assist to turnover ratio in the second half of the season. So just been playing really good basketball. Just the minutes have not been there. But in the second half of the season, he is averaging 46.3 DK points per game, and he put up 42.5 against the Lakers earlier this season, fell 1 assist shy of the double-double bonus, so would have been in like the 46 range. I kind of think that he's a really strong play tonight, so I do like Halliburton at 8.4K. I'd never really like Siakam, and especially when I'm paying 8.2K for him. I'll say the matchup is getting a little bit better. The Lakers have been worse with the rim defense. I still think that they are a better defense than they have been playing over the last couple of games. So I'm not really buying into Siakam here at 8.2K, but I don't mind Turner at 6.4K. The issue is you're competing with a lot of pretty solid center options that are going to be cheaper than him, like Orlando Robinson, Brook Lopez, Alex Sarr, even maybe Adem Bona. Like there's a couple other guys I think that could just straight up outscore him for cheaper.
Yeah, and really off the wall, kind of making 150 team type stuff. I know the price is there, but Benny Mathurin at 5,200 for me. I mean, to kind of go to what you said, this may be too crazy of a thought to go through, but if we got Nembhard and Nesmith both guarding Luka and LeBron, we can't predict foul trouble, but I wouldn't be super surprised to see one of those Benny Mathurin games where he shoots 15 times. No ownership, 5,200, not recommended as a play, but if you have multiple game stacks of this game, I wouldn't mind at least getting a touch of exposure there. But other than that, I agree with you. It's going to be Halliburton. It's going to be Turner. The Siakam stuff, man, we always get him at such low ownership, and most of the time it's at least half of the ownership compared to Halliburton. And then when he kind of floor games, Siakam does offer you that upside. But I agree, 8,200 a little bit too much. And then to kind of reiterate, I think we're almost there with the Luka price. I think we're going to lose a few more $100, get in the 11K range. Then he's going to be able to be playable with LeBron. I think the same goes for Reeves. I'm kind of steadying, the stop loss on his salary around that $7,500 mark to where I'll reconsider him again. But no, I love the game. I think, kind of to look back on last night's slate, I think this kind of reminds me a little bit of that Hawks and Rockets game where I think you have different avenues to be able to stack it up. If you like the Luka spot over the LeBron spot, then you have multiple avenues to get multiple Pacers and vice versa with LeBron. So agree with what you said. And I'm waiting on one of these other huge Mathurin games at 5,200, but we'll see. Clippers and Knicks in New York. Obviously the Knicks on a back-to-back. Clippers are favored by 4.5 with the 218 total. Harden is questionable. I think that's going to be, the biggest news on the entire slate as we move forward closer to lock. Obviously, Deuce McBride and Brunson are out for this one. But like you wrote up in the slate plan, I mean, it was the first time in Knicks history that there was 2 triple doubles on the same team. Hart and Cat both going off last night. I thought Cat was going for 50 when he locked in at half, but I think he was a little focused on that triple double. What are we thinking? Let's talk through some scenarios with Harden in and Harden out.
Yeah, so I would imagine Harden plays just because he's generally been pretty durable and has played through some Q tags this season. But it is also a interesting listing because apparently it was a knee to thigh injury against Lou Dort. Go figure, it's Lou Dort that's injuring guys. And he was kind of struggling to put weight on it, but then they listed him with a sore foot. So I mean, maybe it's just a new pickup injury, and I mean maybe he is closer to doubtful. I'm not sure. And then the Knicks will be getting Mitchell Robinson back to kind of help out with their interior defense that does struggle without him on the court. But if Harden is in, I really like the matchup for him, and I would expect him to be a full go. Just the Knicks give up a ton of points in pick and roll, always been the main weakness for them all season long. Last time he faced off against the Knicks, didn't have a great game, shot the ball a ton, but only went 27, 3, and 7 for 46 DK points. Yeah, I mean, he's just playing really good basketball right now, and I think he definitely topped that if he is in. If he's out, it becomes a little bit tricky because it's obviously such a high usage guy, but nobody looks great in particular.
Could I interest you in a little Bogdan?
I was going to get to that. No, I think that is I definitely think that's interesting there because I do think that he would probably be the guy that's going to start just to get another ball handler in the lineup. Yeah, I would definitely have interest in Bogdan if he's starting. I think last time he started, he played a ton of minutes and did really well, and he's been playing a lot better. Had the issue with the shot this season with Atlanta, but then they're playing, pretty good in a Clippers uniform. But I do think there's a lot of fallout with the Harden injury, mainly to Ivica Zubac, because he's so dependent on James Harden as a pick and roll guy. Like he just gets a lot of his points in that pick and roll, and sometimes in post up they'll use him if he has a mismatch. The matchup would also get a lot harder for Zubac. with Mitchell Robinson in just because he's such a good rim protector. So I kind of think that like Ben Simmons would be a little bit sneaky if James Harden were to miss, because I wouldn't be surprised if like the minutes for Zubac are more in like the 30-32 range versus 36, 34-36 that he's normally getting, and then we get Simmons at like 20-22 or something like that, whatever's left over for Zubac, just to get some extra ball handling out there, because they're basically never going to overlap those guys. It's just not enough floor stretching capability with those two guys on the court together. So I'd be surprised to see what they do with the rotation. I don't really think that Simmons would be much in play, just because I don't think that even like 20 minutes is enough for him to pay off. Maybe he'd have to get like the 22-24, which I just don't think is very likely. They'd love playing Zubac a ton of minutes. But yeah, just something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I would agree. I think Bogdan would be a really solid option. From a usage standpoint, Norm Powell sees a massive bump in usage. Just the per minute production has not been great. He sees a 9.4% usage rate increase. Amir Coffey is actually next, 5.3%, and then Kawhi at 5%. So I think from a DFS perspective, nobody would really stand out because Norm's only at 0.92 fantasy points per minute. Kawhi just at 1.12, which is not great for his price tag, and he has a tough matchup versus OG, who did a really good job defending him last time these teams faced off. But I think Amir Coffey, like if we see some minutes projections update for him and it's like 20 from Coffey, I don't think that he's awful. It's just he hasn't really been playing a ton of minutes right now. And just from like a per minute standpoint, 0.9 for somebody at 3.4K, if they're getting like 20 to 22 minutes, is pretty solid. So I wouldn't like hate that, but yeah, I think Bogdan would probably be the guy that you'd want if he does get the start for Harden. The Clippers side or the Knicks side, yeah, not a ton of interest here. I think this is just gonna be a very defensive minded game, like you said that I said in the slate plan. Double doubles or triple doubles for both Cat and Hart last game. Hart holds the record for the most triple doubles for the Knicks in the season. It was also pretty cool. He gave his game ball to Kevin McCullough, who got his first NBA bucket. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, the matchups are a lot tougher tonight versus last night, where they played the Mavericks, who just give up everything to everybody basically. The Knicks have kind of struggled on offense versus better defenses this season. So I'm not very enthusiastic about these guys tonight. But I don't mind OG Anunoby at 6.9K. I mean, he's just playing really good right now. He had a little trip to the locker room, but it wasn't anything injury related. He just had, I guess it is injury related, but he was just bleeding a ton through his nose. So he'll be fine, but he's averaging 39 DraftKings points per game without Brunson this season. Does have a tough matchup versus Kawhi, but I don't mind getting exposure to him, just hoping that he can beat a bad matchup. And the campaign played another 30 minutes, was terrible last night, but ownership probably come down a good bit here. We know that he's always been a pretty solid per minute producer when he's given the minutes. So I'd be okay going back to him, but probably not at a ton of ownership. And then I don't think that it's too crazy to get some a couple sprinkles of Tyler Kolek if you're playing some 150 max, just because, I mean, he's had 8 and 9 assists in his last 2 games. Not shooting the ball great, not really shooting the ball a ton, but I mean, that's pretty solid for somebody at 3.3K.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to kind of reiterate on Payne, I think we have too much value in the identical range as where he's at. I would not be surprised for that ownership to come down and kind of that recency bias. And I would not also be surprised at a little flop lag here and he kind of has a decent night, but really prefer the other value that's in that range. I love what you said. I mean, it's a little bit tougher. I have some interest in Cat. I think he's just playing real well right now. I think, you know, when players like him have these situations where they can be so productive as a passer, it kind of reminds him how easy it is. So I think, you know, he's okay at 10K. But I am really interested to see what happens with the James Harden stuff. Now, this is more of a kind of broad thought as far as the whole NBA season goes. I know you had mentioned you don't see him really taking, you know, fewer minutes if he does end up playing tonight. Do you think he becomes a little bit more passive, you know, with something like that? I know it's really hard to predict, but in like leg injuries and stuff with such a primary ball handler, do you ever take that into consideration? Or if he's in and you can predict him for minutes, he's playing and his fantasy production should be the same?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that too much. I would say you should probably proceed with a little bit of caution, depending on how bad the injury looked. I didn't see it, but like Matt Butler said in chat, he was pretty hobbled. So yeah, I mean, there's a chance that he is a lot more passive and just gives away a lot of that usage that he would normally have. I wouldn't be surprised at that, but I think that like the general consensus, you probably just anticipate that they're full go, is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you here. All right, guys, 4 down, 2 to go. real quick, I said I'd throw it up on the screen. If you guys don't know, we are Shiptimizer is kind of coming to the end here at the end of the month. So you got a couple more days. But we are with SaberSim. Really changed the game. We're seeing some great stuff in chat, some great user feedback. We have a whole separate section of the Discord with any questions that you may have. So as you can see here on the screen, yes, you can pay the $79 a month to get full access, get Rio slate plan, get the cores, switch over to baseball, get the slate plan. We got a great team over there. PGA Masters are coming up. You can get all that information there. But I fully recommend, kind of taking the time and understanding how much better of a player you can get by stepping up to the core or the starter or the ultimate. Obviously, the core, great deal at $100. All the access, make 150 lineups with SaberSim. But I think that next level to the starter at $129 is very important to becoming a better player. You get the contest flashback, which changed my game over the last couple of years, being able to go back, not only see what you're doing, what differently in comparison to the field, but looking at who these studs are and how they're playing and kind of analyze their process and really take advantage of, seeing what the best players in the industry are playing, including Rio. You can always go in there and kind of see what he's doing, take some notes and become a better player yourself. But to come back, there we go. I always mess that up.
Yeah, you can look at what I've been doing the last week and do the opposite.
You can look back at me for the last 3 months and do the opposite. Jeez, man. Obviously, joking about it in chat, but I feel like you and I have experienced, obviously, you're playing different stuff than I am, but I feel like you and I have been through the same kind of lows on the roller coaster this season, from the injuries and the fades and just kind of being in the same boat. So we are both in the water together, and hopefully we could change that up and find the top of that roller coaster coming soon. But all right, guys, hey, this is a fun matchup. It's really unfortunate about the Dame stuff, and obviously Giannis isn't in, but we got the Bucks at the Nuggets. Joker went from doubtful to questionable. Really curious to hear your lean on that. Obviously, Dame and Giannis are both out. We do have questionable tags on Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., as well as Brown is going to be probable tonight. Personally, I've been attacking Nuggets and obviously had some value going. But I'm curious to see how we're going to break down this Bucks side with a 223 total and the Nuggets favored by almost 10.
Yeah, I mean, the Jokic stuff, I would probably say that he's closer to back tonight. I don't think that you really upgrade somebody throughout the day after listening him doubtful last night. So I kind of think that he's closer to in, and would probably assume MPJ closer to out, just getting the midday downgrade with the back injury. He did have the back injury heading into the NBA from college. So I probably want to proceed with a little bit of caution there. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces on the Denver side that we're going to need to prepare for the Jokic news. Start with the Milwaukee side, though. Obviously, the no Giannis and no Dame is going to be the biggest news on the slate. We're going to have a ton of exposure to this game on the Milwaukee side. And I think the three guys from KPJ, Kuzma, and Brook Lopez are obviously the three that you want the most of. Just from a breakdown standpoint, who benefits the most, it is Kuzma takes on a much larger role. 5.9 is probably a really good price tag for him. We only have a large sample with Dame and Giannis out because he hasn't been there long enough, but he does see a 7% usage rate increase. He's second on the team in usage, only a 13% assist rate. But we know that he can be a decent passer at times, but he does have a pretty solid 14.5% rebounding rate, 0.97 fantasy points per minute. So pretty solid, not a smash play by any means, but I will say that he's probably going to take on a pretty large role tonight. It's probably going to be a lot of him and Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. does lead the team in usage in the second unit. We've seen a pretty decent sample of him leading that second unit, so we know that he can do it. He's done it in years past before. He leads the team in usage at 32.4%, leads in assist percentage 38.5%, 9.86% rebounding rate. So that's all pretty good. I could definitely see him getting a triple-double tonight just based off of those numbers. And a pretty elite 1.46 fantasy point per minute production. He's going to be a near lock for me tonight. I don't even care if he's coming off the bench. I think that he's going to start. I guess I should have led off with that because we don't really know exactly who's going to start. But I think they might go double guards with KPJ, Rollins, Kuzma, Lopez, and then Taurean Prince. But it could be Gary Trent over Kevin Porter Jr. I'm not really too sure why they're really messing around with the Ryan Rollins stuff. I know that he provides some pretty solid on-ball defense, but they're going to be really, really thin in terms of guys that can actually score the ball in that first unit. if KPJ is not out there. So I kind of think that he's in there and Gary Trent is off the bench because Gary Trent does provide, a little bit of ball handling, a little bit of like he can actually find his shot a little bit. So I think that it makes sense in that sense. But Brook Lopez, he does see the biggest usage increase, 8.2%, averaging 1.23 fantasy points per minute. I think that he's just an awesome play tonight. There's been a little bit of talk about these guys being really tired, so I'd be a little bit worried that his minutes come down a bit, but they also can't really afford to lose many games, and they don't really have anybody behind him that can fill the role that they need. So I think those three guys, it's definitely KPJ 1 for me, then Kuzma, and then Brook. I think Rollins is probably closer to a fade just because he's not that great of a permanent producer. The role shouldn't really change as much. I would probably rather get to Gary Trent Jr. He's a really big beneficiary with those guys off the court, but just a 0.88 fantasy per minute producer with Giannis and Dame off, but definitely going to take on a larger workload. Only has an 11.5% assist percentage and 6% rebounding rate, so those aren't great numbers. Going to really need efficient shooting. And then some other guys that I'm considering, Taurean Prince is getting like a third of the ownership as Gary Trent tonight. And I mean, they're kind of like the same play. Prince is definitely a worse fantasy option, I would say, when Gary Trent has the potential for this role. But he's $100 cheaper, same eligibility with the shooting guard eligibility. He's just a guy that you're kind of hoping gets hot from deep. But from a role standpoint, like in a usage and assists, rebounding standpoint, like it's all pretty similar. Trent is definitely the better per minute producer. But I don't know if he's outscoring him 40% of the time. So I'm willing to take some shots on Prince as a pivot off of Gary Trent. And the same thing for AJ Green. He'll definitely see a pretty large increased role tonight, 3.3K. Probably not starting. I think the rules that I'm making for those secondary guys, I think it's going to be max 2 of Green, Prince, Trent, and Rollins. You could consider KPJ, but I think that might be spreading it a little bit too thin because I think you're probably going to want 3 Milwaukee guys tonight. So yeah, I'd probably set a max 2 rule of those 4 guys. And then probably don't expect any like these bad, like Pat Connaughton and Andre Jackson Jr. probably aren't getting into the rotation for much, if at all, tonight. The Denver stuff, as it stands right now, if Jokic were to be in, I have a little bit of interest in him just because he's Jokic. I would assume he's probably back to full. But the matchup is tough. Price is tough, and he is coming off the injury. I think that Jamal Murray is probably the best option on Denver right now just because it's a really good matchup. Guards have been killing the Bucks all season long. They're one of the worst pick-and-roll defenses. Brook Lopez plays a ton of drop coverage, and that's kind of where Jamal can beat you. So I think that he's pretty solid regardless. Expensive tag for him, but he's been playing pretty well right now, so I'm kind of okay with it. And then if MPJ is out, I think it's Peyton Watson that might sneak into the starting lineup. And if he does, like he's kind of a decent pivot off of some of those Milwaukee value guys in the same game because he's coming off of a huge game, like probably one of his best games of his career. What was it against the Bulls? 24
I think he
points.
had a career high, yeah.
Yeah, 24 points, 6 boards, 40 DK points. So yeah, I'd be okay with him. And just another thing to note, like for Milwaukee's defense, there was a stretch earlier in the season. It wasn't too long ago, like when Giannis had that calf injury. Their rim defense got really, really bad over that stretch because it's just a lot for Brook Lopez to be the guy that does everything down low, and Giannis provides so much length and shot blocking ability that their rim defense really struggled. So I think these guys are on Denver in a pretty decent spot. Like even Christian Braun and Aaron Gordon, I wouldn't mind them if we get news that Jokic is out, or if MPJ is out. Like I think that they're kind of worth some shots in tournaments just because the rim defense I expect to get much worse over the however long Giannis is out.
Yeah, pretty unlucky there for the Bucks with the Dame news and obviously the Giannis stuff. I love Jamal Murray tonight. I think the ownership will stay down with the 8,600, like you alluded to. Love what you mentioned about the drop coverage. I mean, when he takes 2 steps inside the 3-point line, every time he shoots it, it feels so automatic. Really like him. He's playing so many freaking minutes. You could just see him. He's tired. He's staying conditioned. He's really taking that role as like, I'm going to play as many minutes as I can. So I really like him. The Joker stuff, I mean, 12-5. Luka or Joker? That I know it's, they're a $500 difference, 2 different scenarios, but I think the answer is Joker just because we're going to have the Bucks pieces. Do you agree with that?
I think so. It is pretty close because I think the matchup is kind of equal. But Jokic has a lot less to compete with where Luka is competing with LeBron.
Yeah. I love it. And then, yeah, I mean, personally speaking, I'm hoping Kevin Porter Jr. is off of the bench tonight. It wouldn't make any sense really why he is once we talk about it, but I think that may help ownership a little bit and not a lot. I mean, people are smart now in these fields, so but it would change it a little bit, and we've seen him close a handful of games with injuries just like this. All right, moving on. Last game of the night. Boston is traveling to Phoenix, taking on the Suns. Celtics are 5.5-point favorites here. Tatum is listed as doubtful, but if I'm not mistaken, he did, go through shoot around. He did participate, and Bradley Beal is out tonight. 219.5 total. Doesn't feel like the best game, but it's a later game, and we're waiting on the Tatum stuff, so there may be some opportunity here.
Yeah, he got the upgrade actually. So he went through. They upgraded him to questionable, and then they said he participated in shoot around. So you kind of have to imagine that he's in, which is crazy. I mean, he must have. I don't know, either just has like X-Men level healing, or he was just doing a really good job acting.
I'm sorry, to interrupt too. I saw a video of him on social media talking about how he cares so much and doesn't take nights off, because some fan is going, as much as I want to believe it, I've watched that dude way too much this season just kind of be so quiet on the floor in situations like that. So I'm curious to see if you agree with what he said, or if you watched enough Tatum this year to where you're like, hey man, I know you got to say it for the camera, but you definitely take nights off.
Oh, he's number one bullshitter, bro. There's no way, because the two most important times of this NBA season I needed him, he took the night off both those nights. So I know firsthand that he definitely takes nights off.
Yeah. So I think one was versus Miami, right? And then
the
Miami game, that was
final.
gross. Yeah, damn. And then what was that? The Jazz that night? Yeah, those are two matchups he could have played well in. This is unreal. But anyways, I digress. Up to you.
Yes, I mean, I wrote everything in this game as assuming Tatum was out, but it obviously threw me off guard knowing that there's a chance that he plays tonight. Our guy, Lord King Guru in chat, doesn't think that Tatum's going to play tonight. I mean, it doesn't make sense for him to play. I mean, there's no reason to re-injure it, but yeah, we'll see, I guess. If he's in, then it's kind of, I would say, closer to a full fade for me, just because these prices are way up there. Like, I don't really want to pay $11K for Tatum. First of all, coming off the injury, I don't really want to play $9K Jaylen Brown with Tatum in. 8.1K for Derek White. I don't think that's really much in play. Like Pritchard and Drew, maybe you can talk me into, just because the matchup is so good for guards. The Suns have been a team that you just want to attack with guards all season long because their pick and roll defense, transition defense has been terrible. They don't really have any good guard defenders besides Ryan Dunn, but he'll be on Jaylen Brown, so that'll open up a ton of open looks for these guys. I just don't know if there's enough upside at these price tags for them if Tatum is in. I guess I'll just talk with Tatum out, because we should definitely be planning for that if he does get ruled out. I think Jaylen Brown would be a pretty solid option. He does see a pretty big usage increase, as you would imagine, with Tatum out. He's really only had one down game where Tatum sat this season. That was where he went for 35 DK points against Detroit. I have to double look, but I feel like that was a blowout. He only played 30 minutes in that game. Some of the other starters were managed in a pretty big way there as well, but he's still averaging 47.6 DK points per game in 5 without Tatum this season. Leads the team in usage, leads the team in assist percentage, 10% rebounding rate, 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Matchup does get a little bit tougher with Ryan Dunn in there, but I think with the Suns still being a pretty poor transition defense, there's a lot of good things that you can like about this matchup for Jaylen Brown. This is all just like to preface it again. This is assuming Tatum is out. If Tatum is out, then the guards are in a pretty good spot here as well. I would think that White is probably the guy I'd have the most interest in, and I probably would be max 1 of White, Pritchard, Drew, or just max 2 and throw Brown in there as well. But yeah, I definitely think that White is the best option just from an upside standpoint. It's going to be tough for Pritchard to get there in a big way, coming off the bench, only playing like 27, 28 minutes. And then Drew, I just don't really think he has enough upside to be viable for tournaments at 6K. And then Kristaps Porzingis, I think, is actually pretty solid here. The Suns are bottom 8 in DVP versus centers over the last 15 games. Porzingis, 1.3 fantasy point per minute producer with Tatum off the court this season, averaging 41 DK points per game. I think that he's a pretty solid option on low ownership. I'm just thinking through some swaps. Like if you start with like 5 or 6 guys in that Denver game, you probably would be able to swap onto some Porzingis if you have like Jokic and then those values and maybe Jamal Murray, something like that. And then you just eat some of the value early on, like the Vukovic and Orlando Robinson or one of the other guys, like Trent Wofford, like you said in those earlier games. Give yourself some flexibility for these late night hammers. And then Big Al Horford, he's going to be left open a ton. So I kind of think that he's in play Actually, no, not with Tatum in. If Tatum is out, then definitely he's in play because he's 5.4K and would not be starting. But if Tatum is out, he would be starting. And if he can get hot, he does have that slate breaking upside. Did it not too long ago, had the double-double, shot like 6 for 12 from deep. And we might see some more minutes out of him regardless, just because the matchup for versus KD is, I think they're going to want to put Al Horford on him. Switching over to the Phoenix side, it's pretty much just KD or Booker for me, and I definitely lean KD. I mean, he's turning it up right now. He has 80 real points in his last 2 games, 42 and 38, and he put up 62 and 64 DK points in those games. Been getting it done against some tough matchups as well. Milwaukee and Cleveland, very tough matchups. I would say Boston is right up there, like defensively with those teams. But I kind of think that there's no matchup that defensively I think that can slow KD down in this game, just because if they put Drew on him, like they'll be able to put him in the post all game. He can shoot over him, huge size advantage over him lengthwise. And if it's Al Horford, I think that he's got the athletic, agility advantage over Al. So I'm kind of buying into KD, just turning a corner and kind of trying to will his team to some wins right now to get into the playoffs. So yeah, I think 9.3K for KD is a fine option. Booker, I think he has the better matchup just because the pick and roll defense for the Celtics, bottom 5 this season. But he doesn't really do enough of that. He's been passing a lot more, has a really big spike in his potential assists, double-doubles in his last 2 games. So I don't really think there's enough upside for him. So I definitely prefer KD. And then Ryan Dunn and Nick Richards, I think they can make your player pool, but it's a pretty terrible matchup for both of them.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to think of some swaps. Let's say Tatum ends up being ruled out. Are you definitely in the boat KD over Jaylen Brown?
Yeah.
I know Porzingis is a little bit too much. So that would be my first thought. You're kind of talking through those things. I think with the positional eligibility of both Brown being a guard and a forward, you do have a little bit of potential to make your decision if you like Booker or KD. And then if the swap does happen or if something changes, you're able to kind of maneuver there. But if you like KD more, I would definitely agree with you. And I think this could be a big night for him. Not really getting as much ownership as I would think here to end the slate. But no, absolutely love it. 6 games all on DraftKings. Interesting to see 2 tanking games and then some games that mean something. Anything you want to leave the people here with before we get up on out of here?
No, not really. Definitely would. I would suggest to be in the stream tomorrow for the MLB launch show. We're gonna have Hoop on there, and Hoop never shows his face in these live shows. So definitely be. I know a lot of people that came over to SHIPIT for Hoop and his stuff, but he's got other obligations running the business and all that stuff. But he's going to be doing the MLB show tomorrow, which should be a hit. Where SaberSim I think is the best, hands down the best optimizer you would want for baseball. I'm sure a lot of people in here that play MLB can agree. But yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in there. And then me and you will have a show. Actually, me and Tidal will be back after that. But yeah, MLB or basketball is winding down here. I was just looking at the schedule. We got about 2 weeks left, two and a half weeks left of shows, and then we'll be done and switch it over to all the playoff stuff. And I will get to you right now, Ross, on the time for that.
I think it's 12 or 12 our time.
So yeah, it'd be 3 Eastern. It says 12, 10 to 11 my time, so it'd be 11 for you.
Oh, because it's a 1 o'clock start. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be that'd be noon, right? Yeah. Noon Eastern?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, noon Eastern. Sorry, that was confusing. But yeah, noon Eastern tomorrow.
Noon Eastern tomorrow.
Yeah.
And baseball's back, man. I'm so excited looking at those contests. I know at opening day they got the fun 254 max.
Yep.
They already have the live final stuff out there, so I couldn't agree more. I didn't mention it when we brought up the Saber graphic, but that is such a huge tool for baseball. Get to all the different combos of stacks. Get to stuff that you would never hand build. They never find anywhere else. But couldn't agree more. I'll be tuning into the stream as well. I'm excited. And this is kind of the prime time here. We got, obviously baseball and basketball together, throwing some golf on the weekends. I don't know. I'm not into UFC, but I think UFC is still going every single weekend. So it's a good time to be behind the computer and behind the TV screen.
Absolutely.
All right, fellas. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't liked or subscribe yet, get to that. If you're not a member over here at SHIPIT Nation, you're missing out. Not only the content on the site and SaberSim, but the Discord, which is really helping players get a lot better. So appreciate the watch. Good luck in your contest tonight, and let's ship it.